we are in the sun.
Yeah, we'll see. And I think today we're going to kind of do, we're going to talk about winter prep. We're getting into 40 degrees, our cold night last night.
Right.
That's a sign of
that definitely impacts bees.
Yeah,
for sure.
Get ready for winter. We may want to consider, if you want to do another one next month, I've been doing classes on Zoom.
Oh, good.
So the big screen, you can probably log in with
there. I mean, that's what we're doing right now. So we're zooming into that room.
I can do a PowerPoint with some photos, videos, and stuff.
Oh, yeah. That would be wonderful. Yeah, we could, I mean, literally, we could go straight through year round if you want. We can just continue bee stuff.
Because I think we're getting to the time of year where October for sure is going to be a 50-50 chance.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, as long as the residents still continue to love it, then I keep asking. They say, yeah, it was really interesting. So that's all I care about. So I'll sort of kick us off. I'm Greg Sini. I'm culture curator at Kemper House, Worthington, and I guess you could say beekeeper extraordinaire. And I have my bee buddy here, Dave Noble. I've called him my bee buddy from the very beginning because he helped me with my initial hive when I found out that Georgia was sending my first beehive. And I went, oh my gosh, I really don't know how to get a bee out of a box into my hive. And I said, I probably need some help. And lo and behold, Dave literally lived blocks from me, and he's one of the best in the Midwest, and I'm not kidding you. So he's Redbeard Bees, and so you can actually dial him up. You can search him on the internet. He sells actual hives. He sells queens. He sells equipment. He's pretty much honey, you name it. This is his business, and so I love supporting him. He's done a great job here. These are actually all of his hives. And what I love is the color. So from the corner, our highest traveled corner, you can actually see our beehives. And often people driving by comment that were like, oh, Kemper House has beehives. How cool is that? And I think a few weeks back, Dave extracted honey from these hives. Is that true?
Yes.
And then how much honey did you get?
We got off of these hives. Remember, we put these in a little later in the season.
Sure.
So we got about 40 pounds of honey off of these hives.
As a novice, 40 pounds sounds like a lot of honey.
It's a lot of honey, but I think, and I hate to make a prediction because it may or may not come true. But I think just seeing how they did this summer, my guess is next year they'll be fully established from day one of the first time the first dandelion blooms.
Sure.
Ready to make honey.
And
so say we could get probably closer to 300 pounds.
What? Yeah. Really? And not in days. So one of the things you have to think about as a beekeeper is how much honey do you extract?
Yeah.
Because this is their livelihood. This is how they stay alive. It's how they take care of the queen. So you just can't go in and ravish them of honey. You have to be very sensitive and discerning as to how much honey you're going to extract from each of the hives in order to let them be able to survive, and is depending on the time of year and what you're going into, and especially now going into the winter season, is a beehive is at its most vulnerable spot in the wintertime. And it's basically because they're not out foraging, they're sustaining themselves on the honey that they have within the hive. They're keeping the queen warm. They're in survival mode, basically. The queen does very little going around and laying eggs, unless I assume it gets to a danger point and the hive sort of understands that, hey, we need a few offspring here, and then we'll.
And it's funny because a lot of those decisions, they're made by all the workers collectively.
Sure.
Right. So imagine getting 6 people to agree on something, and we're getting like 6,000 bees to agree on something.
Wow.
Now, but the decisions they make aren't as complicated. There's indicators that we know of. So, for example, last night we had the lowest overnight temperatures of the whole summer so far. And so those low overnight temperatures and the fact that there's less nectar and pollen coming in, those are signals that they say it's time to start feeding the queen less so she lays less eggs.
So actually Mother Earth is signaling to them, really. I mean, they're just, they're observing what Mother Earth is giving them, and they're responding to it naturally.
And so, exactly, they have, you know, we don't know all the little details of like exactly how cold for how many nights before certain things happen. But, you know, you're exactly right. When we're taking the honey, we're taking it off before winter, which means we have to do some prediction. How bad do we think the winter's going to be? How much honey do we think these bees are going to need? And we use our past experience, but we're making a judgment call.
Sure.
And we're not always right, but also we've learned it's more and more important. Good nutrition. Okay? Greg, I'm talking to, I know you're the choir on this. Good nutrition is so important for every aspect of life.
Yeah.
It's true.
No matter if you're a bee or somebody with dementia or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Nutrition is where it all starts. That's our baseline.
That's our baseline.
That's, you know, you are what you eat.
Yep.
I mean, it's as simple and true as that.
It is cliche, but it's true.
So obviously the best thing for bees is natural pollen and food. And before we go in, we should check. There's a beautiful goldenrod blossom right around the corner.
Oh, okay.
We'll check that out. That's one of their big foods this time of year.
Nice.
But also as a beekeeper, I've taken some of that extra honey off. I also want to make sure they're in their best health going into winter. And that means I'm supplementing with food.
Sure.
So I'm not taking their honey, all of their honey away and giving them just sugar, but I'm leaving them some of their own honey. And we're going to see, about a week or two ago, I gave them a supplemental pollen feeding. And we're going to see how much they're eating on that and how that'll give me indications of their health. So let's look here.
So one of the things that I was always interested in was, why is it that we can provide them with sugar water and that's healthy?
It's not. So
well, that's what I was wondering, because if any organism that you just feed sugar to, I can't imagine that that's something that we're like, hey, this is perfect, and gives them all the nutrition they need.
Right. So I'm giving them pollen patties, which is protein. Now, what I'm seeing here that is encouraging.
Oh, so this is a
not eaten very
pollen patty.
Much. Yeah.
And they've actually, you can see the edge of that. They've eaten that off.
But they haven't eaten a lot, which to me says they've got
they're
pollen
still
coming
foraging.
in. They're not. They don't need it. So that's the point of supplemental feeding.
Wow.
I'm trying to fill a gap in their diet. So far, it's not a very big gap. So that's good.
So you can literally buy pollen in a patty, and then that becomes nourishment over the winter time for your bees.
Well, I'll just make one small
caveat.
Not over winter. So I won't leave these in over winter.
Okay.
This is getting them ready. This is the protein. It's building strong muscle, you know, healthy bees. I'll stop feeding this next month.
Oh, okay.
Then later in the winter, if they need, as you said, sugar's not healthy, just feeding them sugar.
Sure.
But if we get into February and they're almost out of food, I would rather give them sugar, which is not ideal, than let them starve.
Gotcha.
So there's a point at which they just need calories, right, to keep going.
Now, I can honestly tell you, I've been keeping bees for a few years now, and I'd never used a pollen patty, and now I feel guilty.
No, don't.
I do. I feel horrible because I want the best for my bees, and now I'm like, really?
I will tell you, this is really about the second or third year I've used pollen patties.
Really?
In my 25 years.
Oh my gosh.
Outside of raising queens.
Sure.
So when I use a hive to raise queens, I overfeed it because I just want. But honeybee, the situation with honeybees has changed so much. One of the reasons I'm feeding now is because we now know, just in the last 2 or 3 years, we've learned more about why honeybees are dying. And one of the reasons is this mite that feeds on them, it will tuck right in under their belly, and it feeds on some of their internal organs, and those internal organs are built by pollen.
Wow.
So we're kind of, by feeding, we're sort of undoing some of that damage.
Wow.
Or
Strengthening them.
yeah, strengthening them so they're not damaged as much by the
Sure.
wind. But so far, what we should see here, what this tells me, I put pollen feed here. They didn't got that was there for a week. There are some hives I've got that eat that whole thing.
Sure.
But we should see some pollen, that fresh pollen that they're bringing in. The surprise I have for everyone later on.
Yeah.
You saw that pollen in that frame, so that'll be
did.
easy to see. That's that pollen.
By the way, I'm putting on my gloves because my wife would be mad at me. I got stung last week or last month. I didn't really care that I got stung, but my wife says if I keep getting stung, she's going to make it so I can't keep bees. So I'm just following my wife's orders. I'm being a dutiful husband, and selfishly doing it in a sense because I want to keep bees. And you know, one of the things that I've learned is that bees do not sting people that have no fear of bees. If you have, they sense fear. And usually the person that senses fear is the one that gets stung. I mean, 100% of the time, I'm pretty sure of that. Now, I'm not saying you get stung every single time you do that, but I think because
when you're afraid,
yeah,
you breathe faster, you're moving more, and all of these are physical triggers.
that it just like they're responding to Mother Earth, they're responding to your vibe that you're sending out, and that's what I've learned. And so because I have a little bit of a fear of that, because I am a little bit allergic to them, I tend to get stung, and so I wear stuff.
If you notice, because it's colder, see how they're not. When we visited here before, remember how the air around us would be filled with bees?
Yes.
And now they're like, you know what? We're gonna stay in.
Yeah.
We're gonna just have our coffee. We're gonna wait for it to warm up outside.
Yes. Yeah. That's they follow my morning ritual.
I'm gonna bring this out. We might have to go down a box, but I wanna find some of this pollen, and then hopefully everyone will get a really good up close look later on.
I just love the smell of that. I don't have my smell cam on, so you can't smell it, but it just smells heavenly. It is really amazing.
She is up here laying eggs, doing a good job.
She's a busy bee.
Yeah. We want to get her down to the bottom eventually. She's doing what I like to see right now.
Well, you've got a half of a circle at the top here, so I'm sure she might not be in the very bottom one just because the way the road is laid.
Now I think, let me just double check in the sunlight here. So even though that looks empty here, she's come back and laid eggs in there. So this is all brood.
Yeah. And
Let's see if there's any little.
You think there's eggs in there?
Oh yeah, there's eggs in there.
Wow.
And not only that, this little lady here.
Oh, yep, she's coming out.
Yeah, I don't know how good that'll show up. Maybe you'll be able to see a little other thing.
Now, I do remember, was this the hive that we replaced the queen? Didn't we? I thought it was that
33. We have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So this is a new queen in here.
So it's a new queen. She's doing a great job.
Yep.
The hive is growing. Right now, you have very little activity coming in and out of the front, like David mentioned. Look at this, ghost town, because they're like, hey, it's cold out. We can just hang out in here.
Look how much they gather together.
Yeah,
here. They just like to, you know.
They call it, so in a sense, they call it bearding, when you see sort of bees hanging on one another, and actually it looks kind of like Dave's face.
But yeah, you can see here, I'll kind of push them and they all stay sort of stuck together a little bit. But that's just how they keep warm.
Yeah, you can actually see the bee larvae down there. You see their eyes?
Yeah.
Oh, that is just so cool. Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, that one's probably getting ready to get capped up.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to put this down. We're going to go down one more box because I do want to see. And again, here, I just set this aside and see how they've all gathered together to keep warm.
Keep warm. Now, they're just so quiet. You cannot hear any of the buzzing or anything like that. They're just really relaxed.
Cold. It's cold. So their first goal. And next month, maybe we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what they do during the winter Okay, because I'm spending the last couple of weeks and the next month preparing them, making sure they've got plenty of pollen to eat.
Gotcha.
So that pollen, I like to think of it as a hamburger for bees. It's protein. It's going to build really good, strong bees.
It's a veggie, more like a veggie burger.
Right,
Let's
a veggie
just
burger.
say a
Good,
veggie
yes,
burger.
yeah.
Good veggie
Because it
burger.
is. That's a great point, because this is all plant material.
That's right.
This is not, there's no animal protein.
Yep.
But they also need sugar, because sugar
Sure.
is energy, right? Let me move this to the side and see what we find. But so far, I'm checking, like I say, checking on the food, and I'm liking what I see.
And why do you say that?
They haven't eaten through all of this.
Okay.
So that means there's good forage around.
Great.
If they didn't have any pollen coming in, they would have eaten it. Notice how the bees are here?
Yep.
So what this tells me on a cold morning like this is the brood, all those larvae
Yep.
are over here.
Okay.
Because
And
their
so
number
are
one
they
job.
helping to keep that temperate in there,
Yep.
the right temperature? And what is the right temperature in
It's
general?
right around 95, 98 degrees.
All year
Fahrenheit.
round?
Pretty much all year round. It may dip. When they go into dormancy over winter, they may dip down to about 88 degrees.
Uh-huh.
Just to lower their metabolism and
Right,
everything.
right.
But their number one job, especially right now, is to keep all that larva warm,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're not different from people.
Sure.
When we're new parents, what's our number one job? Make sure that our children are
safe and
fed, warm.
Yep. All the basic elements of life.
Yeah. So now, if I pulled this frame out here where there's no bees and there's a bunch of larvae, that would just show that this is a bad mom. But I think what we're gonna find is this is empty.
Would it be a bad mom or bad sisters?
Bad sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're the ones that do all the work. The queen just lays the eggs, and the sisters.
Well, I don't know if the female would agree with you that they're doing all the work then if the queen's laying all the eggs.
Well, right. But she's just laying the eggs, whereas all the workers are doing all of the day-to-day care of feeding.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so again, there's no larva
nothing in
here.
there. Nothing in there, so why be over there?
Yeah.
There's a few that just aren't getting the message. They didn't get the memo today. Hey.
But I'll bet you we get on here, there's enough bees, we're going to have some larvae.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Look at that.
And see how they're just covering it just to keep it warm.
That's just their response in keeping.
Yeah.
That is just so.
Well, that larva, you know, a lot of how the beehive works is on pheromones, which just means smell.
Mm.
And so they can smell the larva. So that helps them know where to go.
Sure.
So again, like you're saying, paying attention.
They're so protective. You know, they sacrifice themselves for the future of the hive. It's amazing.
Yeah. And
so one of the things that when you talk about the lifespan of a worker bee, does that length of, 45 days-ish expand over winter just because they're not as active? Because if you think this stretch of winter where they're not going out, they're not foraging, they're not being, as abusive on their structure and muscle structure and everything it takes to fly and do what they do, so they last a little bit longer over winter.
Yep. And I'm going to just point out real quick before I answer your question. Oh, there's the queen. God love her. That blue dot.
Queen.
I put that blue dot on her so that, one, it makes it easier to find her, and then I can identify
we
her a little
were
easier.
Here when you did that.
Yeah,
so
yeah, that's right.
We watched you do that. You put a little cage over her and you blue dotted her.
Yep.
Which is just.
And you can see it didn't harm her anyway.
No.
She's a month later. She's like, whatever.
She's beautiful.
I've got some permanent eyeshadow on. We're all good to go.
She's real light in color.
Yeah, so she's got a lot of sort of Italian genetics.
Oh, there we go.
So we're going to go ahead and put her down in here.
I love Italian.
We're going to put this back again so they can keep it all perfectly warm.
Yep.
We're going to put this back. So, yeah, you had a great question about overwinter. And what we'll do is we'll just leave this while I answer your question. That way people have some bees to look at.
Sure.
And you kind of hit it right on target. Is in the winter, these bees that normally would only live for about 45 days, 42, 45 days, suddenly are going to live 3 and 4 months. But they're not flying 10, 15 miles a day.
Yeah.
And so that reduces wear and tear. You know, we were talking about cars
Yeah.
before we got started here,
Yeah.
and talking about the age of a car, but it had low mileage.
Yeah.
And obviously, you can have a 30-year-old car if it's only got 60,000 miles, and it'll run great.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah. So bees are the same, and they also, in the winter, they get plumped up. So it's something called, some people call them short day bees. So bees where the days are getting shorter.
Sure.
Those bees tend to get a bigger diet of pollen. So they develop these internal organs that help them live longer. It's actually, the organ produces a hormone called vitellogen. And the more vitellogen that a bee has, the longer it can live. Now, it's not 100%, like we couldn't just give them little teaspoons of vitellogen and get them to live longer.
Right.
But that's all part of the system,
You can see how intelligent Dave is on all this stuff,
But that's why I'm making sure everything that we've learned about the pests and the problems with the bees has changed the way I do beekeeping, so that I'm paying extra careful attention and making sure they're getting the best natural diet they can get, and I'm supplementing that with a little bit of extra feed too. So I'm going to go ahead and smoke these down.
Sure.
So that I can put this box back on top.
Put the box on without crushing bees.
Yeah.
And once again, the only reason why they're moving out of the way is because they do not like smoke.
Yeah.
Just as we don't. And when we're breathing, we don't like to breathe in smoke. Neither do they. And so by just gently fogging that, pushes them down deeper into the hive. Almost missed a step.
I didn't blow the smoke into the hive.
No.
Just above it,
just
to get
above
them to move down.
Yep.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to put that there, and we'll see. I'll check back in a week.
So how much does one of those pads cost? Is that stuff expensive, or?
It can be. So
yeah, I was wondering.
A couple bucks, $2.
Oh, that's not bad.
$2 a piece, but when you've got 100 hives.
Yeah, that gets expensive, right? Yeah. But for your, somebody that just has a couple hives, and honestly, I had one hive for 4 years, and it's difficult to keep one hive. Honestly, I think it's better to have multiple hives. If I were to do it again at my house, I would recommend to a friend, have multiple hives. It just helps, I think, from a health perspective. It helps to sort of even out the balance if you lose a hive over winter or what have you.
The two hives can help each other. So all the time, there on the end, there's a little, check that hive next.
Gotcha.
There's only 2.
Yeah.
It's a newer hive that I split a month and a half ago or something. If she doesn't have time to build up before the winter, guess what? I'll come steal some honey from one of the taller ones.
Sure. Yeah, 4 stack.
Because those won't need all the honey they have.
Gotcha.
So we can,
symbiotic relationship.
Whereas if all we had was one hive, we just have what we have. The other thing is, even with that feeding supplement, so I actually collect pollen from the bees. So in the spring, I have a special thing, and we can look at that next year in the spring when I put it on. And then I feed the pollen back in the winter, in the fall.
Sure.
So in the spring, there's more pollen they can possibly eat. I harvest some of that and feed them back. So that's giving them, it's like canning,
Yeah.
We just picked a whole bunch, my family, we just picked a whole bunch of tomatoes and we canned them, but we're going to enjoy those later on in the winter.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I didn't collect enough, so I had to buy some of the store-bought stuff as well.
Yep.
Because I don't want to be in a case of, well, that's all that you guys collected. Good luck. If you starve, too bad. Because that's not good. That's not a good practice.
Stewardship of a beekeeper.
Right.
Dave did a video that I watched that's on YouTube, and one of the things that I loved in the video is he said why he is so in love with beekeeping and honeybees. It's basically what it's taught him about life and himself.
Yeah.
And it was such a beautiful piece to watch your love and passion and compassion that you put towards bees, that it was really resonated with me as an owner of Kemper House and what we do with our residents. And I have that same love and passion and compassion. And I've learned so much by doing this business about myself, about my family, about what meaning
Relationships
of
with other
life is,
people.
the
Yeah.
relationship, even more about death. And I understand people die, and it's an honor to sort of play a part in that. Bees pass away, but it's the journey that they take. It's the give that they've given while they were here that lets things continue on, you know, and you can learn and parallel so many things from beekeeping to life, and it's really a beautiful thing.
I have to tell you, I was actually thinking about that this morning because yesterday, in my small little town, I actually make deliveries of honey.
Nice.
Because with everything going on, I just want to make it easy for everybody to get honey. And so about once a month over the summer I've done it. Well, this month, today is actually the Jewish New Year. And honey is a big part of that ceremony. So I had a lot of deliveries yesterday that were about making sure everybody had the honey that they needed for their celebrations, right? And this morning when I got up, I was thinking about what the bees teach me about life. And I was thinking about...
That's all right. When you're live, you have background noise.
Right.
You just play.
Yep. I was thinking about honey. And I'm not a big fan of honey. I didn't get into beekeeping necessarily because of honey. But humans in general...
You just said that. You are not a big fan of honey.
No.
What?
I like hanging out with the bees. But it's
honey
anyway,
is the best thing on earth, though.
But I started thinking about... because I was thinking about my wife and my marriage, too, you know, when I get up in the morning. And it's like, honeybees, humans got involved with honeybees because of honey.
Yeah.
But we don't continue staying involved with them because of honey specifically, but because we understand the pollination that they bring up and other things that they do for us, other than the sweet, delicious.
Sure.
And I thought, you know, marriages are a lot like that too. Because the reason you're with somebody may not be the reason you first were attracted to it.
Sure.
Sure, they were sweet and honey-like, but then you realize all this other work, all this other important things they do to help nourish your life.
Wow.
Pollinating apple blossoms in the spring so that we can now have apples.
Yeah. So you were literally paralleling that this morning.
Yes.
With your life.
Yeah, because I spent all day yesterday with the honey. It was just all honey. And I was like,
so what inspires you? Do you actually take time to just think, you know, about this stuff and how it impacts your life? And that's amazing that something like a bee has been that impactful in your life. Yeah. And it's fabulous.
I think about, like, all the time, like, learning to the other life lessons and relationship lessons I've learned with bees is I could go in here. I could say, I only have 5 minutes, and I'm going to do this fast. You bees better get on board. With me being rough and ready and get done quick. And what's going to happen is I'm going to get stuck.
Yeah.
And I look at that as that's how bad fights happen in a relationship.
Yeah.
One person is like, I don't care what your needs are. I'm just going to
force my needs on you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whereas when I stop, like we're doing today, we're going to go nice and slow.
Yeah.
We're going to work on their terms.
Yeah.
I'm still going to get done what needs done.
But it's in their time frame.
It's not, rather than being a fight, it's going to be a cooperation.
But even at that, there's sometimes that you just don't get done what you want done because you realize today's a bad day for them.
Yeah.
And I want to do this, but because it's a bad day, I'll come back and we'll fight this another time.
Exactly. And so it's that idea of learning patience, learning to sort of put yourself in your proper place. You
should write a book on that, you know. No, seriously, you know, life lessons from beekeeping.
I've got a lot of writings, and I will not lie that I am putting some of them together. But yes, I've got a lot of...
We just published a book, our team did, our leadership team here at Kemper House, and it's things to remember about memory care, and it's just how to reset expectations and what you should expect when looking for the best of the best for your loved one. And it was really a special journey, and you need to do that because it just makes you even think that deeper about your craft.
And honestly, even just taking time to think about things.
Yeah, right.
When I'm teaching beekeeping, in fact, one of the classes I've got coming up is planning for beekeeping. And so to sit down and think about what you're going to do next year,
Yeah.
and to consider it rather than just rushing in
Yeah.
blindly. Now, see, we've been so nice with the bees, and look at this. They've treated us.
Oh my gosh.
Our second queen.
Yep. Now look how dark her abdomen is.
Yeah.
That's so cool. She has a totally different look than the last hive we were in.
And I don't know how the resolution is, but you can see
Oh, yeah,
and
you
their
can see it
antennas
perfectly.
are scraping on her abdomen there, and they're
What
just
does
getting
that
her
feel
smell.
like to her? Is that like a soothing thing? Is that a loving touch? What do you think that is?
I mean, I don't know, but I would imagine it can't be annoying because that's the majority of her life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, hey, get away from me.
And
Wow.
and she does. I mean, there's times when queens are going around, they literally have to push these workers out of the way. But again, normally she wouldn't necessarily be here that whole time. But because, in fact, I'm going to steal some of the pollen from that other hive and put it in here.
You know,
But because it's cold, she's probably, it's not hurting her to be out here, but she's not ready to get running and going.
sure. This is a very young hive.
Yes.
So this was brought to us just really a couple weeks ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a month ago. I'm not sure, but
it might have just
yeah, I
been
think
installed on our
it was
last
just
one.
installed
Yeah.
right before our last show.
Yeah.
And so, but you can already see. I mean, at that point, this box was empty.
Yes.
And now it's growing, which is such a as a beekeeper, such a joyful thing to see.
And now my biggest task is I'm going to need to start feeding these some sugar water.
Sure.
These smaller ones that are still growing. Again, I'm supplementing the feed.
Yep.
I'm not taking away the nectar and everything else.
Right.
What I want to do is just give them a little extra boost. And I'm going to do that first with the other hive that wasn't eating all that pollen.
Yep.
We're going to go put half of it here.
All
This
right.
is, again, having more than one hive.
Yep.
Sharing
And being
resources.
flexible, seeing you're responding to what you see the need is.
Yes.
And that's
a lot of times beekeepers will ask, well, when do you feed and how much do you feed? Well, I feed when they need fed, and I feed however much they need fed. And that just requires spending time with. Again, we're going to go into relationship. Spend time with your significant other. Get to understand where they are and where they're coming from.
You
what are their needs?
You will fail as a beekeeper if you do not spend time in your hive. It's the most vital thing to the success of a domesticated beehive.
It's funny because one of the things I do in the winter, I take notes all spring and summer and fall long. And in the winter, I go over those notes because I want to be looking at who I'm going to be putting into the breeding program, which colonies I want to put into honey production versus making more bees.
Jeez.
And as I'm reading the notes, I've spent so much time with all my bees. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember her. Oh my gosh, it was so great back in July. how well she was, brooding up or did this, that, or the other. And spending the time.
Worthington Fire Department, I'm not kidding you, is the very best. They're fabulous.
But spending time getting to know the animals and the people in your life makes you a better part of their life.
Yep.
Because, again, we're able to, these bees don't really need all that pollen.
So if I were to taste that, what would that taste like? Have you tasted it?
Haven't, but there is some sugar added into this just to
entice them.
Yeah, but it's kind of
see, now I could
earthy.
I'll
say earthy.
Earthy.
I was gonna say dirty, but
yeah,
it's kind
earthy.
Of
Earthy. Okay, gotcha.
And then again, we're just gonna set that in there. And then the next time I'm out, I will be checking
to see if they've taken some bites out of it.
The thing is, on all these, I know I put a whole patty in.
Sure.
But I'll just have to make a note. I put half a patty.
Half a patty. Yep.
Because her eating a whole patty versus a half patty, that's two different things.
Right. Yep.
So, yeah, they're just not up and about. But
no, they're not. But I mean, we've shared a lot of amazing information here. Yeah. I just love it. So what do you want to, so we have an observation. Are we okay on time?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go. Let me lock these up.
Okay.
Let's go have
Well,
a look at that goldenrod real quick.
Could we lock them up afterwards?
Yeah.
So let's do that. We'll come back together and we'll lock them up together.
Okay. So let's have a look at that goldenrod, and then we'll take our surprise inside.
Okay.
I'll let you
Yeah.
take over on the inside.
Yep. Got it.
I think this is important too. Just yesterday, I had somebody ask what they could do to help bees. They wanted to plant more flowers, which I said right there, that's the best step. I said, if you're going to start planting for bees, the thing they need most is late season blossoms. Those things that are blooming and producing food for the bees this time of year.
Sure. Yeah.
Because in the spring, there is no shortage.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
with everything
It's
just
abundance.
blossoming and
Yes.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of summer, there is a drought, basically.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A little bit of a dearth. But even then, they're not. The fall is really tricky because sometimes we get too cold, or we get cold quickly, and that shortens the amount of time that they have to collect food.
Sure. Wow.
And other times it stays warm until Christmas.
But I'm sure they're constantly navigating that and adjusting their life and their needs to whatever Mother Earth is sharing with them, right?
Yeah. And our job as beekeepers is to help them with those adjustments. For example, that new hive we got started, it wasn't their choice to get started a month and a half ago. So we can help by putting some frames of honey in there.
Sure.
From other hives. But this is what the fall is
all
about.
Now, what is this called?
This is goldenrod.
Goldenrod. Gotcha.
So if you grew up anywhere out in the country, this means fall.
Really?
This is whole fields just blossom in this, and we get up to about 50 degrees.
And does it have any purpose for humans outside of, or just allowing bees to forage and it's pretty in a field?
Yeah, it's pretty. I don't think it's edible at all.
Yeah.
But it's just great habitat for all kinds of animals. In fact, sometimes, again, if you grew up in the country, you've probably seen before, there's something called a goldenrod gall, which is a big ball here. It's like a fly or a wasp that lays eggs in the stem.
Really?
So it feeds a lot of insect life.
Beautiful.
A lot of very beneficial insects.
Awesome. Oh, it's a beautiful plant.
Yeah.
And we have it right here.
Yeah.
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
You can see this is the railroad track. This is a railroad station behind us. This is part of Silcott. They actually pull engines off here and rebuild train motors.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually head inside quickly and share an observation hive that allows us to safely bring into the building and be able to view the bees' activity, the frames, the honey, the brood, everything.
They're all sealed in here. There's no way they can get out.
Yep. And so, Dave, this is an active hive for him, and you basically close up all the ports that allow the worker bees to get in and out, and then you're able to transport it. And behind these little doors and gateways, you have windows, so you can view what's going on.
And the bees are not suffocating. Don't worry, we've got plenty of holes.
Yeah, you have breather holes in the top.
Yeah. And there's actually the bottom.
And the breather hole itself has screening over it, so then it's tight enough screening that it doesn't allow bees to get through to it. So we are safely doing this. So hopefully we have an audience here. And if not, it's fine. I'm going to open it up. We're going to go through it anyways. I'm going to actually have you just carry it right in, and then I'll sort of take it from there.
Okay.
Ah, we do have an audience. Beautiful. Yeah, yeah, that'd be perfect. Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Have you been enjoying this class so far? Yes? Has it been entertaining? Could you hear me speaking out there? Could you hear Dave? Yeah. Good, good. Well, so did you find the queen? The queen, does she have a dot?
She does.
All right, so
But
where is she?
She's hiding in there.
Okay, well,
She's staying in where it's
awesome. All right,
okay,
well,
I'm gonna let you do that.
yes.
Yeah, the pollen. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, perfect. I'll get you. You can strap up, and
Yep,
I'll be out in a second. Yeah, I'd like to talk with you before you leave. So,
yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Dave. Good job, buddy. So, I safely brought a hive into the building. So this is called an observation hive. So if anybody's interested in actually looking at what an active hive looks like, they're under glass. We're totally protected. There's no way on God's green earth that you could get stung. But if you want to see it and actually see how they function within the hive itself, you can come back here and take a look at this. Does anybody want to see it? Come on up here, Rita. So this is an actual active hive. So you can see all the bees in here. Now they're under glass, so we're safe. They have little breather holes on the top with screens in them, but everything else is closed up. So there's no way for them to get out of here. But we wanted to have the ability to show you. So do you see these little capped combs? That's where the bees are hatching. So, yeah, so the bee itself is in there. So the queen bee lays the egg within the comb itself, and then eventually they feed it, they feed it, they feed it. And then once it gets to a certain size, then they cap that. And that cap is what keeps them safe as they grow into a mature bee. And then eventually they'll chew their way out of that cap, and then they'll be just like a normal worker bee or drone. A drone's the male species of the honeybee. And then we do have a queen bee in here someplace, hopefully. She was in here. We saw her earlier. Wait. No, that's not her. Look at that bee carrying something right there. You see it? It's probably like, hey, this is a piece of trash. We need to get this out of here. So bees have responsibility. The honeybees that you're seeing here, the worker bees, so these are all female. So the queen bee has just thousands and thousands of daughters. And it's the daughters that fly off up to 3 miles away to forage and get pollen and nectar and bring that back to the hive, and they feed that to the queen. They create honey from that. They feed that to the young eggs that have just been laid, and then it's a big cycle. And these bees here that you're seeing, the worker bees, they live about 45 days before they pass away. They fly up to about 500 miles, almost to the 500th mile, and then they die. And they could be on a branch, they could be wherever and pass away. If they pass away in the hive itself, then all the other worker bees will take it and carry it out of the hive so that the hive stays clean and healthy. Isn't that amazing? So these are the bees that when we eat honey, these are the bees that produce that.
When do we get to see honey?
So we're bottling honey right now.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So we end up ended up retrieving 40 pounds of honey about a month ago. And so we bought some bottles and we're getting ready to bottle that up so that we can give some away. Now, honey itself, there was a tomb found in a pyramid that the tomb was over 2,000 years old. They found a jar with honey in it, and it was still fresh. So honey does not go bad, ever. You can leave it out, and it does not go bad. Bless you. Are you allergic to bees? But I just wanted you all to have the opportunity to really cast some eyes on this and see how this is. And normally what you'll see is a queen bee sort of lays in a circular pattern. You see how that's like a circular pattern, all this, the honeycomb that's capped? And that's just what they do. And then on the outsides, that's where they'll put honey, so that they can actually grab the honey and feed it too. They'll put nectar in these. So all the things that they do to feed are on the outside, and then what they call brood, which is bees that are, maturing inside of that comb, are always in this circular pattern. So if I had a frame above it, I think she is probably allergic to the nectar smell. So it would be in a big circular pattern if I had a frame sitting above it. It's the coolest thing. They really truly are. It's like a machine, yeah. And they play off of one another. But yeah, so Dave put this together for us so that we could really get firsthand, take a look at it. Pretty neat. And so under here, there are a bunch of frames like this, sort of stacked across there. And you can see here, see that there's some white framing on the bottom here? That's a queen extruder. So the queen's abdomen is bigger than the worker bee's abdomen. So that back part of the bee, that's its abdomen. The queen's is larger, and so that's called a queen extruder. So she cannot get down into this part of the box because of that extruder. And so that allows us to just observe her being up here, which I was looking for. We saw her earlier, and I just don't see her. But you hear how quiet they are? You can't hardly hear them. It's because they're cold, because it's cold out. If it was warmer out, they'd be more active. You would hear their buzzing. Does anybody want to pet one? I'm just kidding. No, Dee, you're not allowed to pet the bees, okay? Well, that's all I've got for you. I love you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed your bee class. We're going to do another class next month. And so pretty soon we're going to be able to bring samples of honey so we can eat some honey. Yeah, so next class we'll have some honey to give away, okay? Well, thank you. Thank you. If anybody else joined us through the internet watching, thank you, and we appreciate you. And here's our family. Tell them you love them. We love you guys. Bye-bye.